The world beyond my apartment wasn't real to me. That sounds ridiculous, I know. Like something a pretentious philosophy major might say during a late-night debate. But it wasn't an intellectual position. It was the reality I had constructed for myself, brick by digital brick, code by careful code. At 22, I had mastered the art of living without actually experiencing life. My name is Elliot Chen, software developer. Introvert. The kind of person whose footsteps were so light that neighbors sometimes startled when they realized I'd been living next door for months. I preferred it that way, existing in the margins, in the white space between others' bold declarations of selfhood. My apartment, 4B, was my sanctuary. 480 square feet of carefully arranged solitude where everything made sense, where variables were declared, functions returned predictable results, and errors could be fixed with patience and logic. Unlike people, unlike feelings, unlike the messy chaos waiting beyond my door. I didn't know then that chaos was precisely what I needed. I didn't know a lot of things. I didn't know who lived directly below me in 3B. It began with tremors. Not the San Francisco kind, though sometimes it felt that way, but the renovation kind. Without warning or adequate notice, a terse message taped to the lobby door hardly counted, our building's hallways and common areas were undergoing necessary structural and aesthetic improvements. Ridiculous, I muttered to myself, fingers flying across my keyboard as I tried to ignore the drilling that had started promptly at 8 a.m. 3 days into the renovation, and I was already at my wit's end. My carefully calibrated work routine, the backbone of my existence, was fracturing under the assault of pneumatic hammers and the scrape of industrial sanders. Just 2 more weeks, I reminded myself. You can survive anything for 2 weeks. I slid my noise-canceling headphones on, cranked up the volume on my ambient focus playlist, and dove back into the bug I'd been tracking for the past 3 hours. Around me, my desk was arranged in perfect symmetry. Dual monitors aligned to the millimeter, keyboard at exactly the right distance, coffee mug, black, no handle, to the right, condensation forming a perfect ring on the coaster beneath it. Then it happened. A tremor so violent it sent my coffee sloshing over the rim of my mug and onto my pristine desk mat. My monitors wobbled dangerously. The jackhammer from hell must have hit something substantial in the building's bones. God damn it! I ripped off my headphones, ready to storm downstairs and demand they show some consideration for the people actually trying to live and work in this building. But as the vibration subsided and my anger started to ebb, I noticed something else. Something beautiful. Music. No, not just music. Movement, rhythm, life. It came from below, from apartment 3B. Through the floorboards, I could hear it. The deliberate thud of feet landing, the whisper of movement, the controlled breathing of someone deeply engaged in physicality. Whoever lived below me was dancing, real dancing, not the awkward shuffling I occasionally attempted when no one was watching, but the kind that spoke of dedication and passion. I lowered myself to the floor, pressing my ear against the hardwood. The dancers' movements created their own rhythm, a heartbeat separate from but somehow in perfect synchronicity with the music that accompanied it. The melody was faint through the layers between us, but the vibrations traveled through the building's skeleton, up through my palms and into my chest. For 45 minutes, I forgot about my code. I forgot about the construction. I forgot about everything except the pulse of life that existed just 1 floor below mine. When it finally stopped, the silence felt like loss. I stood up, brushing the dust from my knees, feeling strangely unmoored. Who was this person? How long had they lived below me? How had I never noticed? The questions followed me through the rest of the day, through my evening routine, through my dreams. My alarm went off at 6:30 a.m., as it always did. I made coffee, as I always did. I checked my emails, as I always did. But for the first time in, well, possibly ever, I found myself paying attention to the sounds from below. Nothing yet. Whoever the dancer was, they weren't an early riser. By the time the construction crew arrived with their cacophony of destruction, I'd already made progress on my work. The repetitive nature of coding soothed me, returned me to my carefully ordered existence. But sometimes, between commands, between breaths, I found myself listening. Waiting, it was nearly noon when I heard it again. Not the pounding of feet this time, but music, different from yesterday. Something with strings and a slow, aching melody that seemed to hook into my chest and pull. Before I could think better of it, I was on the floor again, ear pressed to the hardwood, heart racing with the absurdity of what I was doing. What if someone came in? What if the dancer somehow knew I was listening? But I couldn't pull away. The music swelled, and with it, I imagined movement. Limbs extending, body turning, telling stories without words in a language I'd never learned but somehow understood in the marrow of my bones. The spell broke when my phone buzzed with a text from my project manager. I scrambled up, face burning with embarrassment despite being completely alone. This is ridiculous, I told myself. You're acting like a character in a bad romance novel. I threw myself back into work with renewed determination, cranking the volume on my headphones until I couldn't hear anything but synthesized beats designed to increase productivity. But the damage was done. Something had awakened in me. Curiosity, maybe. Or loneliness I hadn't permitted myself to feel until now. 3 more days passed in this strange new rhythm. Work, listen, sleep. Work, listen, sleep. The construction continued, growing more intrusive by the day. They'd moved to my floor now, the hallway outside my apartment transformed into a dusty, half-demolished liminal space. I'd taken to ordering groceries for delivery to avoid the chaos. Each time I opened my door, the familiar landscape of my world had changed again. Walls stripped to studs, floorboards torn up, ceiling panels removed to expose the building's circulatory system of pipes and wires. On Friday evening, I stepped out to collect a package that had been delivered. The hallway lights flickered ominously, the electricity apparently as unsettled by the renovations as I was. Dust motes floated in the amber glow, making the air seem thick, dreamlike. I had just retrieved my package when the lights gave one final, valiant flicker and died. Perfect. Just perfect. I turned to retreat into my apartment and found my door had swung shut behind me. My heart sank as I tried the handle. Locked. Of course it was locked. I always kept it locked. And my keys were inside, along with my phone. No, 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 I muttered, jiggling the handle uselessly. Panic rose in my throat, thick and suffocating. The hallway suddenly seemed narrower, darker, hostile in its half-demolished state. I stood frozen, package clutched to my chest, trying to calm my racing thoughts. The property manager wouldn't be back until Monday. The construction crew was gone for the weekend. None of my neighbors knew me well enough to offer help. I'd made sure of that. I'd have to go downstairs, find someone with a phone. Call a locksmith. The very thought made my palms sweat. Speaking to strangers? Asking for help? These were scenarios I actively engineered my life to avoid. With no better options, I felt my way toward the stairwell, the emergency exit sign providing the only illumination in the otherwise pitch-black hallway. The door to the stairs creaked as I pushed it open, the sound echoing in the concrete chamber beyond. And there he was. Sitting on the bottom step, illuminated by the glow of his phone screen, was a man I'd never seen before. Lean but strong, with dark curls falling across his forehead, skin gleaming with a light sheen of sweat. He wore loose-fitting dance pants and a simple white t-shirt that clung to his shoulders. He looked up as the door opened, dark eyes reflecting the red glow of the exit sign. The dancer from 3B. It had to be. "Oh," he said, voice rich and warm with surprise. "Hello there." Words failed me. I stood frozen in the doorway, package still clutched to my chest like a shield. "Power's out on your floor too?" he asked, standing up in one fluid motion that spoke of complete bodily awareness. I nodded, then realized he might not be able to see me clearly in the dim light. "Yes," I managed. "And I'm locked out. That makes 2 of us." His laugh was unexpectedly gentle, almost musical. "I was just trying to figure out my next move. The main entrance is locked, something about the security system resetting when the power went out, and the back exit is blocked by construction materials." "Oh," I said intelligently. Social interaction had never been my strong suit, and being trapped in a dark stairwell with an unfairly beautiful stranger wasn't helping matters. "I'm Nico, by the way, apartment 3B. He extended his hand. I shifted my package awkwardly to free my right hand. "Elliot, 4B. His hand was warm, his grip firm, but not aggressive. "I've heard you. Dancing, I mean." The words tumbled out before I could stop them. In the dim light, I saw his eyebrows raise slightly. "I hope it hasn't been bothering you. The floors in this building aren't exactly soundproof." No, it's nice. Beautiful, actually." I felt heat creep up my neck and was grateful for the darkness. Nico studied me for a moment, head tilted slightly. "You want to get out of this stairwell and figure out what's going on?" I nodded, relieved at the change of subject. "The lobby, then," he said. "There's usually someone at the security desk who might be able to help." We descended in silence, our footsteps creating a strange, syncopated rhythm that echoed off the concrete walls. I was acutely aware of his presence beside me, the subtle scent of sandalwood and clean sweat, the controlled grace of his movements, even in near darkness. The lobby was dimly lit by emergency lights, casting long shadows across the marble floor. No security guard in sight. Just us, two strangers united by circumstance, standing in a pool of soft amber light. "Well," Nico sighed, "looks like we're on our own." I clutched my package tighter, anxiety crawling up my spine. "What do we do now?" He turned to me, and in that moment, something passed between us. An understanding, a current of connection I neither expected nor knew how to interpret. "We wait," he said simply, "and maybe get to know each other a little better while we're at it." The lobby's emergency generator kept a single overhead light functioning, casting a small circle of warmth in the otherwise shadowed space. We sat on the edge of the decorative fountain, long since dried up, another victim of the building's general state of disrepair, an arm's length apart. "So," Nico broke the silence, "4B, we've been neighbors for, 6 months? And this is the first time we've met." I blinked in surprise. 6 months? You've lived here that long?" His laugh was genuine, head tilting back to expose the line of his throat. 7 months next Tuesday. I've seen you a few times, coming in with groceries, checking your mail. You always seemed busy." The thought that he had noticed me, had seen me when I hadn't seen him, sent a strange flutter through my chest. "I work from home," I explained lamely. "Software development. It keeps me occupied." "Ah, that explains it. The mysterious neighbor who never leaves his apartment." His tone was teasing, but not cruel. "I leave sometimes," I protested weakly. "For what? Emergencies? Solar eclipses? The apocalypse?" Despite myself, I smiled. "Food, occasionally, and I had to go to the office last month for a meeting." "A whole meeting?" He pressed a hand to his chest in mock astonishment. "Living dangerously, I see." The tension in my shoulders began to ease. There was something about Nico that made conversation feel less like navigating a minefield and more like dancing. Following steps I somehow already knew. "What about you?" I asked. "You're a dancer?" His expression softened, eyes growing distant. "Yeah. Contemporary, mostly. I teach at a studio downtown 3 days a week and audition for projects when I can." "Is that what I hear? Through the floor? You practicing?" He nodded. "Sorry if it's disruptive. Small apartment, wooden floors, not ideal for a dancer, but the rent was right." "No, don't apologize," I said quickly. It's nice. Hearing life happening." Our eyes met in the dim light, and something shifted in the air between us. A recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits despite our obvious differences. Me, the hermit coder who feared the world outside his door. Him, the dancer who expressed himself through movement and music. "So, what's in the package?" he asked, nodding toward the brown paper parcel still clutched in my hands. I'd almost forgotten I was holding it. "Oh, just some new headphones, noise canceling, for the construction." I paused. "Although, I guess that they wouldn't block out your dancing. Would you want them to?" The question hung between us, heavier than it should have been. I found myself shaking my head. No, no, I wouldn't. Nico smiled, a slow, warm thing that reached his eyes. Good. An hour passed, maybe more. Time felt strange in the half-lit lobby, disconnected from the usual markers that structured my days. We talked about everything and nothing. The renovation, a complete disaster, Nico declared. The neighborhood coffee shop, criminally underrated, I admitted. The way the building creaked at night, like it's telling stories, he said. It was the longest conversation I'd had with another human being in months, possibly years, and I was surprised to find I didn't want it to end. We should probably figure out what to do about being locked out, I finally said, responsible nature reasserting itself. Nico stretched, his t-shirt riding up slightly to reveal a sliver of skin above his waistband. I looked away quickly. I might know another way back to our floors, he said. There's a service stairwell on the other side of the building. The door sticks, but I've used it before when the elevator was out. Hope fluttered in my chest. You think it might still be accessible with the renovation? Only one way to find out. He stood, offering me his hand. You come in, 4B? I hesitated only for a moment before taking it, letting him pull me to my feet. His palm was calloused but gentle against mine. Lead the way, 3B. He guided me through the darkened building, past the mailroom and the laundry facilities, to a narrow door half hidden behind a vending machine. The secret passage, he whispered dramatically, giving the door a practiced shove with his shoulder. It opened with a groan of protest, revealing a narrow stairwell lit only by small safety lights along the baseboards. After you, he said, producing his phone and activating its flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. I stepped inside, the space so narrow our shoulders brushed as he followed. The door swung shut behind us with an ominous click, plunging us into near darkness save for the cone of light from his phone. This feels like the beginning of a horror movie, I muttered. Nico laughed, the sound bouncing off the close walls. Don't worry, if a killer clown appears, I promise to sacrifice myself so you can escape. How chivalrous. I'm a gentleman like that. His voice was closer to my ear than I expected, sending a small shiver down my spine. We began to climb, the stairs steep and uneven. Halfway between the second and third floors, Nico's flashlight beam caught on something blocking the way ahead. A stack of painting supplies, drop cloths, and what appeared to be pieces of dismantled ceiling tiles. Well, shit, he said eloquently. I peered around him at the obstruction. Can we move it? Maybe? Let's see. Together, we began carefully shifting the supplies, creating a narrow path through the debris. The work was dusty and awkward in the confined space, our hands occasionally brushing, bodies necessarily close in the narrow stairwell. Almost got it, Nico grunted, moving a final paint can. As he shifted his weight, his foot caught on a drop cloth. For a terrible moment, he wobbled off balance, arms pinwheeling in the darkness. Without thinking, I reached out, catching him by the waist. His body was solid and warm against mine. His weight momentarily pressed fully into me as he regained his footing. Whoa, he breathed, one hand coming up to steady himself against my chest. Nice reflexes. We stood frozen for a heartbeat, 2 heartbeats, bodies aligned from chest to knee in the narrow passage. His face was inches from mine, close enough that I could feel his breath, see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes, caught in the reflected glow of the dropped flashlight. Then, slowly, he stepped back, retrieving the light from where it had landed on a step. Thanks for the save, he said, voice slightly rougher than before. No problem, I managed, my own voice sounding strange to my ears. We continued our climb in silence, the air between us charged with something I couldn't, or wouldn't, name. The service stairs led us out on the 3rd floor, Nico's floor. The hallway here was in a similar state of renovation chaos as mine, but at least the emergency lights were working, casting everything in a dim bluish glow. Well, I said, suddenly awkward now that our immediate problem was half solved. Thanks for the guided tour of the building's hidden passages. My pleasure, he replied, a hint of amusement in his voice. Though I'm afraid you're still locked out of your actual apartment. I groaned, the reality of my situation crashing back. Right. I guess I'll have to call a locksmith if I can find a phone to use. Nico hesitated, then offered, "You can use mine, and you're welcome to wait in my place until they come. Better than sitting in a dark hallway." My heart performed a complicated gymnastic routine. Enter his apartment. The dancer's private space? "I don't want to impose," I said automatically. "It's not an imposition if it's an invitation." He tilted his head, studying me. "Unless you prefer the hallway." The thought of sitting alone in the darkness while waiting for a stranger with lockpicking tools to arrive was decidedly unappealing. "If you're sure it's not a bother, Elliot," he said, my name sounding different in his mouth, more interesting somehow. "It's really not a bother." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. His apartment was the mirror image of mine in layout, but there the similarity ended. Where my space was minimalist and orderly, his was alive with color and movement even in stillness. One wall was covered in photographs, Nico in various dance poses with different groups in theaters and studios. Another held a collection of masks from around the world, their expressions frozen in joy or sorrow, or something in between. The furniture was mismatched, but deliberately so, as if curated for comfort rather than aesthetics. A worn leather couch was draped with a vibrant woven blanket. Bookcases overflowed with volumes on dance, art, philosophy, their spines cracked from use. But most striking was the space in the center of the room, a clear area about 10 feet square, the hardwood floor here visibly more worn than the rest. His dance space, the source of the rhythms that had been filtering up through my floorboards. "It's not much," he said, watching me take it all in. "But it's home." "It's wonderful," I said honestly. And it was. It felt lived in, experienced, in a way my apartment, despite its careful organization, never had. "Make yourself comfortable," he said, gesturing to the couch. "I'll grab my phone so you can call that locksmith." While he disappeared into what I assumed was his bedroom, I lowered myself onto the edge of the couch, feeling strangely like an intruder despite the invitation. From here, I could see a small balcony through sliding glass doors, plants spilling from hanging pots, fairy lights strung along the railing. "Here we go," Nico returned, holding out his phone. "Locksmith's number is already pulled up." As I reached for it, our fingers brushed, a whisper of contact that shouldn't have registered and yet sent electricity crackling up my arm. "Thanks," I murmured, quickly dialing before I could dwell on my reaction. The locksmith, when I reached him, was apologetic but clear. Due to the power outage affecting several buildings in the area, he was backed up with emergency calls. It would be at least 3 hours before he could get to me. 3 hours? I repeated, dismay evident in my voice. Nico, who had been pretending not to listen from where he was rummaging in the kitchen, turned. "Problem?" I ended the call with a sigh. "He can't come until after midnight. Apparently, half the neighborhood is having power issues, and I'm not exactly a priority case." "Well then," he said, returning with 2 glasses of wine. "Looks like we have time to kill. Red, okay?" I accepted the glass, our fingers brushing again. "I'm really imposing now." "Imposing would be if you were boring company." He settled beside me on the couch, leaving a respectful distance between us. "So far, the jury's still out on that one." Despite my anxiety, I found myself smiling. "Thanks for the vote of confidence." He raised his glass in a small toast. "To blackouts and renovations, bringing neighbors together since time immemorial." I clinked my glass against his. "To secret stairwells and locked apartments." The wine was rich and earthy, warming me from the inside out. Or maybe that was just Nico's presence, his easy manner slowly dismantling the walls I'd built around myself, one brick at a time. We ended up sitting on overturned paint cans in the half-renovated hallway outside his apartment, the wine having loosened something in both of us. The emergency lighting cast strange, shifting shadows as we talked, transforming the construction disaster zone into something almost magical. "Okay, your turn," Nico said, swirling the last of his wine in his glass. We'd been trading questions, each slightly more personal than the last. "Why software development? What drew you to it?" I considered the question, trying to articulate something I'd never really examined. "I guess I like the logic of it, The order. If something doesn't work, there's always a reason, and if you're patient enough, you can find it. I paused. The world doesn't make sense to me a lot of the time. People don't make sense, but code does. He nodded slowly, eyes never leaving my face. That makes sense. We're not so different, you know. I raised an eyebrow skeptically. No, really, he insisted. Dance is also about finding order in chaos, about creating meaning through structure and rules. He set his empty glass aside. It's just that my medium is physical and yours is digital. The observation struck me as surprisingly insightful. I never thought of it that way. Plus, he added with a mischievous smile, we both work with our hands. He wiggled his fingers for emphasis, long and elegant. I found myself tracking the movement, imagining those hands moving across a keyboard, molding clay, cupping a face. I cleared my throat. Your turn. Question. He leaned back, balancing precariously on his paint can. What's something you want to do but haven't let yourself? The question caught me off guard with its precision, as if he'd somehow seen straight through me to the core of my carefully constructed existence. Travel, maybe? I ventured. I've never been outside the country, never even been on a plane. His eyes widened. Never? Not even once? Never needed to, I shrugged. Everything I need is here. Or online. Nico shook his head slowly. The world is so much bigger than what fits on a screen, Elliot. I know that intellectually, I admitted, but knowing something and feeling it are different things. He reached for his phone, scrolling through it before finding what he wanted. Here, he said, offering me an earbud. Listen to this. It's what I was practicing to earlier today. I hesitated, then took the earbud, fitting it into my ear. Our hands brushed as he passed his phone between us, and this time neither of us pulled away quickly. His thumb pressed briefly into my palm, warm and solid, before he released the device. Music filled my ear. A haunting melody with strings and percussion that seemed to build like a wave gathering strength. It was beautiful, yes, but more than that. It was evocative, stirring something nameless in my chest. This is the piece I'm choreographing for an audition next month, Nico explained, his voice low. Close your eyes. I did, letting the music wash over me. Now imagine, he continued, voice barely above a whisper. Movement that expresses what you're feeling. Not what you think you should feel, but what's actually happening in your body right now. With my eyes closed, I was acutely aware of everything, the hard edge of the paint can beneath me, the cool emergency lighting against my eyelids, the heat of Nico's body inches from mine. And the music, speaking of longing and possibility and things I'd never let myself want. That's dance, he said softly. That's what I do. I take what's inside. The mess, the beauty, the confusion, and I give it form. I make the invisible visible. I opened my eyes to find him watching me, expression earnest in the blue-tinted light. I'd like to see that, I said, surprising myself with the sincerity in my voice. You're dancing, properly, I mean, not just hearing it through the floor. Something flickered across his face. Pleasure, surprise, something warmer I couldn't name. I'd like that too. We sat in comfortable silence as the song played through, neither of us moving to break the fragile connection of the shared earbud, the phone balanced between our hands. It was nearing midnight when we finally left the hallway, Nico insisting on accompanying me upstairs to meet the locksmith. The building had settled into an eerie quiet, the only sounds our footsteps and the occasional creak of settling construction materials. Watch your step here, he warned, flashlight beam illuminating a section of floor where boards had been pulled up. They left it a complete disaster zone. As we rounded the corner to my hallway, the lights flickered, and then, with a low hum, suddenly came back on. Power's back, I observed unnecessarily, blinking in the sudden brightness. Just in time, Nico smiled, gesturing ahead where a man in a work uniform was examining my door. Mr. Chen? The locksmith called when he spotted us. Got here a bit early. Traffic wasn't as bad as I feared. Yes, that's me, I stepped forward, fumbling for my wallet. Thank you for coming. The process of unlocking my door took less than 5 minutes, a fact that would have been embarrassing if I hadn't been distracted by Nico's presence behind me. The strange intimacy we'd developed over the past few hours, hovering between us like an unspoken question. With a final twist of his tools, the locksmith had my door swinging open, my familiar, orderly apartment revealed beyond the threshold. After paying the locksmith and thanking him profusely, I turned back to Nico, suddenly awkward. The evening was ending, the spell breaking. Tomorrow we would return to our separate lives, me above, him below. Well, I said lamely, thanks for everything. He studied me for a moment, head tilted slightly. It was my pleasure, Elliot from 4B. I should have said goodnight, should have stepped inside my apartment and closed the door. Instead, I heard myself asking, would you like to come in for a nightcap or something? Nico's smile was gentle. It's late. Rain check? Of course, I said quickly, trying to mask my disappointment. Absolutely. But Elliot, yes? I meant what I said earlier, about showing you my dancing sometime. If you'd like. The sincerity in his voice made my chest tighten. I would, like that, I mean. Good. He took a step back, about to turn toward the stairs. Good night, then. Good night, I echoed, watching him go. I was halfway through my door when the hallway lights abruptly cut out again, plunging everything into darkness. You have got to be kidding me, I muttered, fumbling for my phone to activate its flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating a familiar silhouette at the end of the hall. Nico had stopped, framed in the red glow of the exit sign, his body a study in elegance even in stillness. Slowly, he turned back toward me. I stepped into the darkened hallway, drawn by something I couldn't name, my heart thundering in my chest. We moved toward each other as if choreographed, meeting in the middle of the construction chaos, islands of light and shadow playing across our faces. I thought the power came back on, I said, voice barely audible over the pounding in my ears. Maybe it was just a temporary fix, he replied, stepping closer. We stood facing each other in the darkness, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, see the rise and fall of his chest. Elliot, he said, voice low and intimate in a way that sent shivers racing along my spine. You don't have to say anything. I already see you. Before I could process his words, he reached for my hand, turning it palm up. His thumb pressed into the center of my palm, a point of warmth and pressure that somehow connected directly to my racing heart. Then, with deliberate slowness, he lifted my hand toward his lips. My breath caught in my throat, the world narrowing to this single point of connection between us. His eyes never left mine as he leaned forward, his intention clear. And as his lips hovered just above my skin, the emergency generator kicked in, bathing us in sudden harsh light. But the spell didn't break. The emergency generator kicked in, bathing us in sudden harsh light, but the spell didn't break. Nico's lips hovered just above my palm, his eyes locked with mine, unwavering. For a heartbeat, time suspended between us, caught in the amber of possibility. Then, softly, deliberately, he pressed his lips to my skin. The kiss was feather light, barely there, and yet somehow the most present thing I'd ever felt. A single point of contact that seemed to ignite something dormant inside me, sending warmth spiraling up my arm and into my chest. When he pulled away, his eyes were questioning, careful. I should go, I whispered, though every cell in my body screamed otherwise. Should you? His voice was low, tinged with something between hope and resignation. The rational part of my brain, the part that had carefully constructed my safe, predictable life, was sounding alarms. This was uncharted territory. This was risk. This was change. I don't know what this is, I admitted, my voice barely audible over the distant hum of the emergency generator. Nico's smile was gentle but tinged with sadness. Neither do I. But I'd like to find out. If you want. Did I want? The question echoed in my chest, in spaces I'd kept carefully empty for years. I stared at him, at this beautiful stranger who somehow didn't feel like a stranger anymore, and found myself nodding. Yes, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. I think I do. Something flickered across his face, relief maybe or joy, before he took a deliberate step back, creating necessary space between us. Not tonight, though, he said. It's late and... He gestured vaguely at the darkness around us, the half-demolished hallway. And we have time, I finished for him, the words tasting new and frightening and wonderful on my tongue. We have time, he echoed, the promise settling between us like a physical thing. Good night, Elliot. Good night, Nico. I watched him walk away, his silhouette disappearing down the darkened hallway, and felt something shift inside me, like tectonic plates realigning, like the tremors from construction that had started all of this. Inside my apartment, I leaned against the closed door, palm still tingling from the press of his lips, and listened to the unfamiliar sound of my own racing heart. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the evening. The way Nico's hand had felt in mine as he guided me through the dark stairwell, the cadence of his laugh as we balanced on paint cans, the look in his eyes as he pressed his lips to my palm. By dawn, exhaustion had finally pulled me under, and I slept fitfully until the now familiar sound of construction jolted me awake around noon. I stumbled to my kitchen, mechanically preparing coffee, my body moving through the familiar routine, while my mind circled endlessly around the events of the previous night. Had I imagined the intensity of that moment? Had I misinterpreted his gesture, reading too much into what was perhaps just a cultural difference? It wasn't until I sat at my desk, attempting to lose myself in code, that I noticed it. A folded piece of paper, but what had been slipped under my door. With unsteady fingers, I retrieved it and carefully unfolded the page. Elliot, if you're free tonight, meet me on the roof at 8. There's something I want to show you. N.P.S. Bring a jacket. It gets cold up there after dark. I read the note 3 times, heart quickening with each pass. The roof? I'd never even been up there, hadn't known it was accessible. What did he want to show me? And why did the thought of seeing him again send equal measures of terror and excitement racing through my veins? The hours crawled by, each minute stretching like taffy as I attempted to focus on work. The code that normally absorbed my complete attention now seemed distant, unimportant compared to the slip of paper propped against my monitor. By 7, I'd abandoned all pretense of productivity. I showered, changed clothes twice, then a third time, unsure what one wore to meet a dancer on a rooftop at night. I settled on simple dark jeans and a blue sweater my mother had once told me brought out my eyes. The practical side of me grabbed a jacket as instructed, though the evening was mild. At 7:55, I took a deep breath and stepped out into the hallway. The service stairs Nico had shown me yesterday continued past my floor, I discovered, eventually leading to a heavy metal door marked Roof Access, Authorized Personnel Only. It was propped open with a brick, an invitation. I hesitated, hand on the cool metal, then pushed through. The evening sky spread above me, a deepening blue canvas where the first stars were just beginning to appear. The city stretched in all directions, lights flickering on as dusk gathered. A gentle breeze carried the scent of distant rain and something else. Something cooking? I followed my nose around a large HVAC unit and found him. Nico had transformed a corner of the roof into something magical. String lights hung between makeshift posts, casting a warm glow over a patchwork picnic blanket spread on the ground. 2 mismatched chairs had been arranged beside a small folding table where candles flickered in glass jars. A portable speaker softly played music I didn't recognize but immediately loved. Something with strings and a haunting melody. And there was Nico, turning from a small camping stove where something simmered in a pot, his face lighting up when he saw me. You came, he said, as if there had been any doubt. I came, I agreed, stepping closer, drawn like a moth to his flame. Just in time, he said, gesturing to the pot. Dinner's almost ready. You cooked? I asked, oddly touched by this detail. Nothing fancy, just pasta, but the view makes up for it. He nodded toward the horizon, where the last remnants of sunset painted the sky in strokes of orange and purple. As if on cue, The lights across the rooftop flickered once, twice, and died. The power had gone out again, leaving only the candles and the last glow of daylight. Perfect timing, Nico laughed, striking a match to light another candle. The universe wants us to have a proper candlelit dinner. In the soft glow, his features were softer, his eyes deeper. The fear that had dogged me all day began to recede, replaced by a strange calm. Whatever this was, whatever we were doing, it felt right in a way few things in my life ever had. I hope you like red sauce, he said, dishing pasta onto two mismatched plates. It's my grandmother's recipe, one of the few things I can cook without burning down the kitchen. I accepted the plate and took a seat in one of the chairs, watching as he poured wine into coffee mugs. I forgot glasses, sorry, and settled across from me. To unexpected meetings, he said, raising his mug. To power outages and renovations, I replied, echoing his toast from last night. We ate as darkness fully claimed the sky, the candles casting dancing shadows across our faces. From below, the muffled sound of construction continued, the renovation crew apparently working late, but up here, it was just a distant hum, easily overlooked. So, Nico said, setting his empty plate aside, I have a confession to make. My heart skipped a beat. Oh? I didn't invite you up here just to feed you mediocre pasta. I wouldn't call it mediocre, I countered, earning a brief smile. The thing is, he continued, leaning forward slightly, candlelight catching in his dark eyes. I've been watching you, not in a creepy way, I hope, but I've noticed you, coming and going, always alone, always contained, and I've been curious. I swallowed hard, unsure how to respond to his honesty. Then yesterday happened, he said, and suddenly you weren't just the mysterious neighbor anymore. You were a person. A real, actual person with thoughts and feelings, and a hand that fit into mine like it belonged there. He looked down at his own hands, flexing them slightly. And I realized I wanted to know more. About you, about why you live so quietly. About what makes you smile. His vulnerability was disarming, cracking something open inside me that I'd kept carefully sealed. I live quietly for a reason, I said finally, the words feeling pulled from somewhere deep inside. The world is a lot. Too much sometimes, all the noise, the expectations, the unpredictability of other people. Code makes sense. Algorithms don't change their minds, or judge you, or leave without warning. I hadn't meant to say so much, but once I started, the words kept coming. But something about you makes me want to step outside my shell, which is terrifying and exhilarating. And I'm not entirely sure what to do with that. Nico was silent for a long moment, considering my words with a seriousness that made me feel truly seen. We can go slow, he said finally. There's no rush, no expectations, just possibilities. The word hung between us, glittering with promise, possibilities. When was the last time I'd thought in those terms, rather than certainties and probabilities? I'd like that, I said softly. He smiled then, wide and genuine, dimples appearing in his cheeks. Good. Now, dessert? He produced a bar of dark chocolate from his pocket with a flourish. Nothing pairs better with existential conversations than chocolate, I always say. And just like that, the tension eased. We talked about lighter things as we shared the chocolate, favorite movies. His, anything with dance, obviously. Mine, science fiction. Childhood pets. His, a three-legged cat named Tripod. Mine, a series of tragically short-lived goldfish. Dream vacations. His, Bali for the dance culture. Mine, Japan for the technology. As the evening deepened, a comfortable silence fell between us, punctuated only by the distant sounds of the city and the occasional bang from the construction below. Thank you for this, I said eventually. For dinner, for everything. Thank you for coming, he replied simply, for trusting me enough to step out of your comfort zone. Our eyes met across the candles, and something unspoken passed between us, an acknowledgement of whatever was growing here, fragile and new. Days passed, falling into a new pattern. Work, listen for Nico's dancing, meet him somewhere. The roof, the stairwell, once even the laundry room at midnight when neither of us could sleep. Always in the margins, in the spaces between our regular lives. Always just the two of us. We were careful. The renovation provided convenient excuses, hallways blocked, elevators out of service, the constant reshuffling of residents through the chaos. No one questioned seeing us together occasionally, navigating the obstacle course our building had become. But there was caution in our movements, in the way Nico would step back if voices approached, in how I would pretend to check my phone if the elevator doors opened unexpectedly. We were secret keepers by unspoken agreement, though neither of us had articulated exactly what we were protecting or why. A week after our rooftop dinner, I found myself sitting on the floor of my apartment, ear pressed to the hardwood, as had become my habit, listening to Nico dance below. But this time was different. This time I knew the man behind the movements, knew the feel of his hand in mine, the sound of his laugh, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. My phone buzzed with a text. "Can you hear me?" I smiled, typing back, "Yes. What are you working on?" "New choreography. Not going well." I hesitated, then, "Can I see?" The response took longer this time. "Are you sure?" My heart raced as I typed, "Yes." Service stairs. 10 minutes. I'd never been to Nico's apartment, I realized as I changed into a fresh shirt. Our meetings had always been in neutral territory, the liminal spaces of the building, belonging to neither of us. This felt like crossing a threshold, literally and figuratively. The service stairs were becoming familiar now, the path from my floor to his automatic. I knocked softly on the metal door to the third-floor hallway, and it opened almost immediately. Nico stood there, slightly breathless, hair damp with sweat. He wore loose black pants and a thin white tank top that clung to his chest. My mouth went dry at the sight. "Hi," he said, stepping back to let me through. "Hi," I echoed, following him down the hallway to his apartment. Inside, the space was different than I remembered. The center of the room had been cleared completely, the furniture pushed against the walls to create a makeshift dance floor. The lights were dimmed, creating a sense of intimacy that made my pulse quicken. "I'm not used to dancing with an audience," Nico admitted, moving to a small speaker system in the corner. "So be kind." "I don't think I could be anything else," I said honestly. He gave me a small, grateful smile before pressing play. The same haunting music I'd heard through my floor began to fill the room. "I'm working on a piece for an audition," he explained, moving to the center of the room. "A contemporary ballet company is looking for male dancers. It's a big opportunity." I nodded, settling onto the edge of the couch, suddenly aware of the privilege of what I was about to witness. "The theme is vulnerability," he continued, rolling his shoulders, loosening his body. "I've been struggling with the interpretation." And then, without further preamble, he began to dance. Any words I might have had dissolved as I watched him transform. His body became something fluid, something elemental, water and fire and air all at once. He moved with a grace that seemed impossible, defying gravity in leaps that hung suspended for heartbeats before he landed in perfect silence. But it was more than technical skill. It was the emotion that radiated from every movement, longing, fear, hope, desire, all laid bare in the arch of his back, the extension of his arm, the tilt of his head. I understood, watching him, why dance had persisted through human history. It was the most honest form of communication, transcending language, speaking directly to something primal and true. When the music faded and Nico stilled, chest heaving with exertion, I realized I'd been holding my breath. That was... Words failed me. "Nico, that was incredible." He shook his head, frustration evident in the set of his shoulders. "It's not right yet. It's missing something." "What?" I asked, genuinely curious. He ran a hand through his damp hair, searching for words. "Authenticity, maybe? All my life I've performed for others, stepping into roles, masks, rhythms not my own." His eyes found mine, vulnerable in a way that made my heart ache. "But you make me feel like I can just be." The raw honesty in his voice stripped away any pretense between us. I stood, drawn to him by some force I couldn't name. I don't know anything about dance, I said softly. But I know what I saw was real. Was you. He shook his head, unconvinced. It's still a performance. A mask. Then what's beneath it? I asked, stepping closer. What would it look like if you danced just for yourself? Just for me? Something flickered in his eyes. Challenge, fear, determination. He moved to the speaker, selected a different track. This music was simpler, spare piano notes falling like raindrops. No choreography, he said, returning to the center of the room. No audience expectations. Just this. And he began to move again, but differently this time. Gone were the dramatic leaps and technical flourishes. This was something more organic, more intimate, a conversation without words, a confession without sound. His body spoke of loneliness, of searching, of finding unexpected connection. Of esse when he finally stilled, the silence between us was charged with everything unsaid. He stood before me, chest rising and falling, eyes questioning. That, I whispered, was the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. He closed the distance between us in 2 strides, stopping just short of touching me. Elliot, he said, my name almost a prayer on his lips. Yes? I'm going to kiss you now, if that's okay. My heart hammered against my ribs, the world narrowing to just this moment, just this man. It's okay, I breathed. His hand came up to cup my cheek, thumb tracing the line of my jaw with a gentleness that made me tremble. Then, slowly, giving me every chance to pull away, he leaned in. The first press of his lips against mine was tentative, questioning. A whisper rather than a declaration. I froze, overwhelmed by sensation, by the newness of it all. Nico began to pull back, uncertainty in his eyes. Without thinking, I reached for him, fingers curling into the fabric of his tank top, holding him in place. Don't stop, I murmured against his mouth. That was all the encouragement he needed. His arms wrapped around me, pulling me against the solid warmth of his body as he kissed me properly this time, deep and searching and achingly real. I'd been kissed before. A handful of awkward encounters in college that had left me more confused than enlightened. But nothing had prepared me for this. For the way Nico's mouth moved against mine, for the taste of him. Salt and sweetness and something uniquely his own. For the small sound he made when my hands found their way to his hair. We broke apart eventually, both breathless, foreheads pressed together as we steadied ourselves. Wow, he whispered, a smile in his voice. Yeah, I agreed eloquently. Wow. His arms were still around me, one hand tracing idle patterns on my lower back. I should have felt trapped, crowded. Instead, I felt anchored. Safe. You okay? He asked, pulling back slightly to search my face. I nodded, not trusting my voice. In truth, I was more than okay. I was exhilarated, terrified, joyful, all at once. Emotions I'd kept carefully controlled for so long now surged through me, overwhelming in their intensity. Nico must have seen something of this in my expression. He led me to the couch, keeping one of my hands in his as we sat. Talk to me, he said gently. I took a shaky breath. I don't do this, any of this. I don't let people in. I don't feel this much. And now I don't know what I'm doing, I admitted. You're vibrant and talented and beautiful, and I'm just me. Am I strong enough to hold someone like you? The question had been haunting me since our first meeting. The fundamental mismatch between his bright, expansive life and my carefully contained existence. Nico's expression softened. Oh, Elliot, you don't have to be strong all the time. That's the point of connection. Sometimes I hold you, sometimes you hold me. He squeezed my hand. And you are not just anything. You're extraordinary in your own quiet way. The words burrowed into places inside me that had been hollow for so long, filling them with something warm and bright. I'm scared, I whispered, the confession torn from somewhere deep inside. Of what? Of how much I feel. of how quickly this is happening, of what happens when the renovation ends and we don't have excuses to bump into each other in dark hallways. I swallowed hard. Of what people would think if they knew. Nico was quiet for a moment, considering. Would it be so bad if people knew? The question hung between us, heavier than it should have been. I don't know, I said honestly. My life is ordered, predictable. People have expectations of me, at work, in my family, if anyone finds out. My job, my routine. Everything I've built could collapse. Silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken fears. I know, Nico finally said, his voice barely audible. I'm scared, too. The admission surprised me. You are? You seem so confident, so sure of who you are. He gave a small, sad laugh. I'm a performer, Elliot. I've gotten very good at showing people what they want to see. He looked down at our joined hands. The dance world isn't always kind to men who love men, especially men who dance the way I do, without apology, without trying to seem less me. I hadn't considered that his world might have its own constraints, its own expectations. The thought that he was taking risks too, that I wasn't alone in my fear, was strangely comforting. So what do we do? I asked. Nico lifted my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles. We take it one day at a time. We find moments like this, spaces where we can be ourselves together, and we decide as we go what risks are worth taking. It wasn't a solution, not really, but it was honest. Real, like everything about Nico seemed to be. I can do that, I said, one day at a time. One day became two, became a week, became the sweetest kind of secret. We created our own world in the margins of our lives, stolen moments in the service stairwell, late nights on the roof, text messages that made me smile in the middle of workdays. And kisses. So many kisses. Against the wall of the rarely used back hallway. In the elevator when it briefly stopped between floors. Once, memorably, in the shadow of a construction tarp, while workers shouted just feet away, Nico's hand over my mouth to muffle my surprised laughter. I learned the taste of his skin, the sound of his heartbeat, the way his breath caught when I traced the line of his collarbone with my fingers. I learned that he hummed when he was happy, that he couldn't cook anything but pasta, that he'd wanted to dance since he was 4 years old and saw a performance of the Nutcracker. In return, I let him see parts of me I'd kept hidden for years, the anxiety that sometimes paralyzed me, the weight of family expectations that had shaped my choices, the loneliness I'd convinced myself was preference. You're like a book written in code, he told me once, as we lay side by side on my bed, not touching, but close enough to feel each other's warmth. Complex and beautiful once the pattern reveals itself. I turned to look at him then, struck by the poetry of his words, by the way he saw value in the very things I'd thought made me difficult to love. But for all our growing closeness, we remained careful. Our relationship existed only in private, behind closed doors, or in forgotten corners of the building. We never acknowledged each other if we happened to pass in the lobby when others were present. Never betrayed by word or glance the truth of what we had become to each other. The secrecy wore on us both, I think, though neither of us said so directly. It was there in the way Nico's smile would fade when we had to part ways in public. In the heaviness that settled in my chest when I had to pretend he was just a neighbor, just an acquaintance. 2 weeks after our first kiss, we found ourselves on the roof again, watching the sunrise after a night when neither of us could sleep. The renovation was nearing completion, the disruption that had brought us together soon to end. My audition is tomorrow, Nico said, breaking a comfortable silence, for the ballet company. Are you ready? I asked, studying his profile in the pale morning light. I think so. He turned to look at me, eyes serious. I changed the choreography after dancing for you that night, made it more honest. Pride and something deeper bloomed in my chest. They'd be crazy not to take you. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. It would mean more travel if I get it. More performances. Less this. He gestured between us. The implication settled heavily between us. Less time together. Less us. We'll figure it out, I said, with more confidence than I felt. That's what phones are for, right? And I can come see you perform. The words felt hollow even as I said them. How would I explain attending his performances? Who would I say he was to me? Nico seemed to read my thoughts. Would you? Really? Would you sit in an audience and watch me dance, and then what? Pretend we barely know each other afterward? The hurt in his voice was like a physical pain in my chest. Nico, no, I'm sorry, that's not fair. He rubbed a hand over his face. I'm tired and nervous about tomorrow. Ignore me. But I couldn't. The question had been asked. The doubt given voice. It hung between us, demanding acknowledgement. I don't know what to do, I admitted finally. I care about you. More than I thought possible after such a short time. But I'm not brave like you. I don't know how to be visible the way you are. Nico's expression softened. You're braver than you think, Elliot. 2 weeks ago, you wouldn't have let a near stranger into your carefully ordered life. Wouldn't have listened to me dance or kissed me back or shared your fears with me. He reached for my hand. Courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being afraid and doing the thing anyway. His words settled into me, a truth I hadn't considered. Was I braver than I'd believed? The thought was both terrifying and strangely liberating. He's a flame burning bright in the dark, and with me, he finally lets himself glow. The words came unbidden, a thought spoken aloud without intent. Nico tilted his head, questioning. That's how I think of you, I explained, heat rising to my cheeks. Like this bright, beautiful flame. And somehow, for some reason, you've chosen to share that light with me. He was quiet for a long moment, eyes suspiciously bright in the growing daylight. You see me, he said finally, voice rough with emotion. Not the dancer, not the performer, not the mask. Me. He swallowed hard. Do you have any idea how rare that is? Before I could respond, the door to the roof banged open, making us both jump. A construction worker emerged, surveying equipment stored there, completely oblivious to the moment he'd interrupted. Nico stood, pulling me up with him. We should go. I need to practice before tomorrow. We made our way back to the stairwell in silence, the spell of our early morning confession broken by the intrusion of the outside world. At the door to the 3rd floor, Nico paused. Will you come tomorrow? To the audition? It's at 2, at the Hawthorne Theater downtown. The invitation was unexpected, a step beyond our careful boundaries. Are you sure? I'm sure I want you there. His eyes held mine, unwavering. The rest, we'll figure out as we go. Like we said. I hesitated only a moment before nodding. I'll be there. His smile was like the wind breaking through clouds. Thank you. He squeezed my hand once before disappearing through the door, leaving me alone in the stairwell with a promise I wasn't entirely sure how to keep. The Hawthorne Theater was smaller than I'd imagined, an intimate space with perhaps 200 seats arranged in a gentle slope facing a bare stage. I slipped in just as the auditions were beginning, finding a seat near the back where I hoped to remain unnoticed. A panel of judges sat at a table at the front, their backs to the audience. On the stage, dancers waited in the wings, visible only as shifting shadows. A woman with a clipboard called names, one by one. Each dancer emerged, performed their piece. Some breathtaking, some merely proficient, and then stood for brief questioning from the judges before exiting. I watched, heart in my throat, as each name was called, each performer came and went. None were Nico. Then, finally, Nicholas Reyes. And there he was, walking to center stage with the fluid grace I'd come to recognize as uniquely his. He wore simple black pants and a fitted gray top that emphasized the lean strength of his body. His face was composed, professional, but I saw the slight tightness around his eyes that betrayed his nervousness. The music began, The same haunting piece I'd heard through my floor that first day, that I'd watched him dance to in his apartment. But the choreography was different now, infused with something raw and honest that hadn't been there before. As I watched, transfixed, I realized what I was seeing. He was dancing our story, the cautious first meeting, the growing connection, the push and pull of fear and desire. Each movement spoke of discovery, of vulnerability, of finding unexpected beauty in hidden places. When he finally stilled, chest heaving with exertion, there was a moment of complete silence in the theater. Then from the judges' table, murmured appreciation, hurried note-taking. Questions followed, technical things about his training, his experience, his approach to the piece. Nico answered each with poise, but as he spoke, his eyes scanned the audience until they found mine. The briefest smile flickered across his face before he returned his attention to the judges. But it was enough. He'd seen me. I'd kept my promise. After the audition, I waited outside the theater, unsure of protocol. Would we acknowledge each other, pretend to be strangers? The familiar anxiety of social uncertainty crept up my spine. Dancers began to emerge in twos and threes, some jubilant, some clearly disappointed. I hung back, hands shoved in my pockets, suddenly feeling conspicuous and out of place. Then Nico appeared, deep in conversation with a woman who had also auditioned. They paused on the theater steps, exchanging contact information, professional courtesy in every line of their bodies. As the woman walked away, Nico's eyes found mine. For a heartbeat, he hesitated, the weight of our careful boundaries visible in the tension of his shoulders. Then, deliberately, he crossed to where I stood. "You came," he said, voice warm with gratitude. "I promised I would." Around us, other dancers continued to exit, some casting curious glances our way. "How did it go?" I asked, hyper-aware of who might be listening. "Good, I think. Really good." His smile was cautious but genuine. "They said they'll be in touch within the week." "Your performance was—" I struggled to find words adequate to what I'd witnessed. "It was extraordinary, Nico." Something softened in his expression. "It was for you," he said quietly. "All of it." The admission hung between us, too intimate for this public place, but too important to go unspoken. A group of dancers emerged from the theater, calling Nico's name, inviting him to join them for celebratory drinks. He glanced at them, then back at me, conflict written across his face. "Go," I said, understanding. "You should celebrate. You earned it." "Come with me," he replied, the words barely audible. A test, a threshold, a step beyond our careful boundaries into something new and frightening and real. I looked at the group of dancers waiting expectantly, at Nico's hopeful expression, and felt the familiar panic rise in my chest. What would I say to them? How would I explain my presence? What would they think when they saw how awkward, how ordinary I was compared to their vibrant, talented friend? "I can't," I said finally, the words like ash in my mouth. "I'm sorry." Disappointment flickered across his face, quickly masked. "It's okay. I understand." But did he? Could he possibly understand the war raging inside me? Between wanting to be at his side, acknowledged and real, and the terror of stepping so completely outside the careful life I'd constructed? "Tomorrow?" I asked, a peace offering. "The roof? Sunset?" He nodded, but something had changed between us. A door that had been opening was now closing again. I'd failed some test I hadn't known I was taking. "Tomorrow," he agreed, already stepping away. I watched him join his friends, watched them envelop him in easy camaraderie, in a world where his talent was recognized and celebrated. A world I'd been invited into, however briefly, and had chosen to reject. As they walked away, Nico glanced back once, his expression unreadable in the fading afternoon light. I paced my apartment that evening, replaying the moment outside the theater over and over. Had I made the right choice? The safe choice, certainly. But the right one? For the first time in years, the orderly confines of my space felt like a prison rather than a sanctuary. The walls I'd built to keep the world out were now keeping me in, separated from the one person who had made me feel truly alive in years. Below, there was no music, no rhythmic footfalls. Nico's apartment was silent. Was he still out with his friends? Had he come home and simply chosen not to dance? The absence of his presence, even through the floor, felt pointed somehow. Accusatory. I tried to work, to lose myself in the familiar comfort of code, but my fingers kept stilling on the keyboard, my mind wandering back to the look on Nico's face as I declined his invitation. The careful mask that had slipped into place, hiding the hurt I'd glimpsed just beneath. By midnight, restlessness drove me from my apartment. The renovation was nearly complete now, the hallways mostly restored, though still smelling of fresh paint and new carpet. The service stairwell, our secret passage, would soon be returned to its original purpose, a forgotten utility route used only by maintenance staff. My feet carried me there without conscious decision. The metal door creaked as I pushed it open, the sound echoing in the concrete chamber beyond. I climbed slowly, memories of Nico accompanying me at every step. The first time he'd guided me through the darkness, flashlight in hand, laughter bouncing off bare walls. The kiss we'd shared against the railing between the third and fourth floors, his body warm and solid against mine, his hands tangled in my hair. The quiet conversations we'd had sitting on the steps, sharing pieces of ourselves we'd kept hidden from the world. When I reached the roof access door, I hesitated, hand on the cool metal. What was I doing? It was past midnight. The roof would be empty. Nico was probably asleep or still out or... I pushed through anyway, needing air, space, perspective. The night was clear, a rare blessing in the city. Stars pricked the darkness above, competing with the urban glow. A cool breeze carried the scent of rain, though no clouds threatened. I moved to the edge of the roof, gripping the railing as I looked out over the sleeping city. Couldn't sleep either? The voice behind me nearly sent me over the edge. I spun to find Nico sitting in the shadow of an HVAC unit, knees drawn to his chest, a bottle of wine beside him. I didn't see you, I said unnecessarily, heart still racing from the surprise. Sorry. He didn't sound particularly apologetic. I come up here sometimes after auditions. To think. I approached cautiously, unsure of my welcome. May I join you? He nodded, sliding the wine bottle toward me as I settled beside him. No glasses, I'm afraid. I seem to recall we managed without them before, I said, accepting the bottle and taking a swig. The wine was sweeter than I expected, almost syrupy. How was the celebration? I asked finally, when the silence stretched too long. Fine. His voice was neutral. Everyone was in good form, high spirits. I should have come, I said quietly. I wanted to, You don't have to explain, he interrupted. I know who you are, Elliot. I know what I'm asking isn't easy for you. The gentleness in his voice was somehow worse than anger would have been. I took another drink, liquid courage burning down my throat. I'm sorry, I said finally, for being a coward. Nico turned to look at me then, moonlight catching in his dark eyes. Is that what you think you are? Isn't it? You invite me into your world, and I refuse because I'm afraid of what people might think. What would you call it? He was quiet for a long moment, considering. I'd call it human, he said finally. We're all afraid of something, Elliot, of rejection, of judgment, of not being enough. He took the bottle back, his fingers brushing mine. I'm afraid too, you know. The admission surprised me. Of what? Of how much I feel for you after such a short time. Of what happens when this renovation ends and we have to decide what we are to each other without the cover of chaos. Of never being quite good enough for the career I've dedicated my life to. He took a long drink. Of losing you before I've really had you. The raw honesty in his voice stripped away any pretense between us. I reached for him in the darkness, finding his hand, threading our fingers together. You haven't lost me, I said softly. Haven't I? His voice was thick with something between hope and resignation. Today felt like a crossroads, Elliot, and I'm not sure which direction we took. He wasn't wrong. There had been a choice presented outside the theater, and I had made it. But perhaps it wasn't the final choice. Perhaps there were still paths open to us if I was brave enough to take them. Ask me again, I said suddenly. What? Ask me to come with you, to meet your friends, to step into your world. I squeezed his hand. Ask me again. Nico studied me in the moonlight, searching for something in my face. Are you sure? No, I admitted with a shaky laugh. I'm terrified, but I want to try. For you. For us. Something shifted in his expression, hope breaking through clouds of doubt. Okay, he said softly. There's a performance tomorrow night. Some friends from the studio. Nothing fancy. Just a small showcase. Come with me? My heart hammered against my ribs. But I nodded. Yes. I'll come with you. His smile was like dawn breaking across his face. Really? Really? He moved then, closing the distance between us, his free hand coming up to cup my face. You continue to surprise me, Elliot Chen. Is that a good thing? I asked, leaning into his touch. The best thing, he murmured, just before his lips found mine. The kiss was different from our others, less desperate, more deliberate, a promise rather than a question. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, Nico kept his forehead pressed to mine, unwilling to create even an inch of space between us. I should tell you something, he said, voice low in the darkness, in the spirit of honesty. What is it? I asked, sudden anxiety gripping my chest. The company I auditioned for today. If I get it, I'd be traveling. A lot, for months at a time sometimes. The words fell between us like stones, heavy with implication. Oh, yeah. He pulled back slightly, though his hand remained on my face. I wasn't going to audition, actually. I almost didn't go. Because of me. The thought was both flattering and horrifying. Nico, no, you can't make decisions like that based on whatever this is between us. Why not? He challenged gently. Isn't that what people do when they care about someone? Factor them into their decisions? The concept was so foreign to my solitary existence that I struggled to process it. But your career, your dreams, are important, he finished for me. But so are you. The declaration hung between us, too significant to be dismissed, too new to be fully embraced. You hardly know me, I protested weakly. I know enough, he countered. I know you listen when I talk about dance, really listen. I know you see beyond the performance to the person beneath. I know you're braver than you give yourself credit for. His thumb traced the line of my cheekbone. I know I've never felt this way about anyone before. Words failed me. Instead, I leaned forward, capturing his lips with mine, trying to express through touch what I couldn't articulate. His arms wrapped around me, pulling me closer until I was practically in his lap, the heat of his body a shield against the night's chill. When we broke apart, both gasping for air, the world seemed to have shifted on its axis, familiar yet fundamentally changed. Come downstairs with me, Nico whispered against my mouth. Come home with me. I nodded, beyond words, beyond fear. For this night, at least, I would be brave. I would step out of my carefully ordered existence and into the unknown, with him as my guide. Morning found us tangled together in Nico's bed, sunlight filtering through curtains neither of us had thought to close. I woke slowly, disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings, until memories of the night before came flooding back, bringing heat to my cheeks and a smile to my lips. Nico slept beside me, one arm thrown across my waist, his face peaceful in repose. I studied him in the gentle morning light, the fan of his dark lashes against his cheeks, the slight curve of his lips, the strong line of his shoulders visible above the rumpled sheets. Beautiful, he was so beautiful, it made my chest ache. As if sensing my scrutiny, his eyes fluttered open, confusion giving way to recognition, to pleasure. Morning, he murmured, voice rough with sleep. You're still here. Did you think I'd sneak out? I asked, reaching out to brush a curl from his forehead. Wasn't sure, he admitted, turning to press a kiss to my palm. You're still new to all this. All this? Letting someone in, he clarified. Being vulnerable. Waking up with someone. I considered his words, testing them against the unfamiliar but not unwelcome warmth spreading through my chest. I like it, I decided. Waking up with you. His smile was like sunshine. Good. Because I intend to make a habit of it. The declaration should have terrified me. Instead, I found myself nodding, something settled and certain taking root inside me where doubt had lived for so long. We stayed in bed far too long, talking softly, trading lazy kisses, learning each other's bodies in the forgiving light of day. It was nearly noon when hunger finally drove us to the kitchen, where Nico made us omelets that were slightly burnt but delicious nonetheless. So, he said as we ate, seated close together at his small table. The showcase tonight. You're still coming? A test. A small one, perhaps, but a test nonetheless. Had the courage of last night's decision survived the light of day? I took a deep breath, steeling myself. Yes, I'll be there. Relief and joy bloomed across his face. Thank you. It means a lot to me, Elliot. I know. And I did. I was beginning to understand the weight of what I meant to him, this beautiful, talented man who could have had anyone but had somehow chosen me. As promised, that evening found us walking into a small performance space downtown, my hand firmly clasped in Nico's as he guided me through the crowd. He nodded to people he knew, sometimes stopping to introduce me. This is Elliot, my friend. The slight hesitation before friend, a concession to my comfort rather than a denial of what we were becoming to each other. I tried to smile, to make conversation, to be worthy of the proud way Nico kept me at his side. But anxiety thrummed beneath my skin, a constant awareness of eyes on us, of judgments being formed, of boundaries being crossed. You okay? Nico murmured during a lull, his hand warm on my lower back. Getting there, I managed, offering a tight smile. His eyes searched mine, concern evident. We can leave if it's too much. No, I said firmly. I want to be here, with you. I'm just... Processing, he supplied with understanding. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere. The simple reassurance loosened something in my chest. I leaned into him slightly, drawing strength from his solid presence beside me. The showcase itself was a revelation. 6 dancers, Nico among them, performing pieces they had choreographed themselves. I watched, transfixed, as bodies transformed into stories, into emotions made visible. Watching Nico dance would never get old, I realized. The power and grace of his movement, the raw honesty he brought to every gesture. When it ended, the small audience erupted in applause. I clapped until my hands hurt, pride swelling in my chest. Afterward, as people mingled and congratulated the performers, Nico found me again, eyes bright with the residual energy of his dance. What did you think? He asked, a hint of vulnerability beneath his confident smile. You were incredible, I said honestly. All of you, but especially you. He laughed, pleased but embarrassed by the praise. Biased much? Absolutely, I agreed, surprising myself with my boldness. Completely and utterly biased. His eyes softened, something warm and private passing between us despite the public setting. Thank you for coming, for being here. Thank you for asking me. Again. I hesitated, then added, I'm sorry I said no the first time. Don't be. He squeezed my hand. We all move at our own pace, Elliot. What matters is the direction, not the speed. As we left the venue an hour later, walking hand in hand through the quiet streets toward the subway, I felt something settle inside me, a peace I hadn't expected. The world hadn't ended because I'd stepped out of my carefully constructed boundaries. The sky hadn't fallen because I'd let someone see me, really see me. Your place or mine? Nico asked as we approached our building, a teasing lilt to his voice. Mine, I decided. You haven't seen it properly yet. His eyebrows rose in surprise. You sure? My mess invading your perfect order? I'm sure, I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. I want you there. His smile was worth any disruption to my carefully arranged space. Days fell into a new rhythm. Work, be with Nico, sleep sometimes, repeat. The renovation neared completion, the chaos that had brought us together subsiding into mere inconvenience. But we had created our own world now, one that existed beyond the excuse of construction zones and power outages. Nico spent more nights in my apartment than his own, his presence slowly transforming my sterile space into something lived in. A hoodie draped over my chair, dance shoes tucked beside my desk, a second toothbrush in my bathroom. Small changes, domestic and ordinary, yet each felt monumental in its implications. We were careful still, especially around the building. Old habits die hard, and the fear of judgment hadn't entirely faded. But we were no longer hiding, not completely. When we passed neighbors in the hall, we acknowledged each other. When we ate at the cafe down the street, we sat at the same table. Small steps, baby steps, but steps nonetheless. A week after the showcase, I arrived home from a rare day at the office to find Nico sitting on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by scattered papers, concern etched across his face. "What's wrong?" I asked, immediately kneeling beside him. He looked up, eyes troubled. "I got in. The company? The audition?" My heart leapt with pride, even as something cold settled in my stomach. "Nico, that's amazing." "Is it?" He held up a contract, the official logo of the ballet company emblazoned at the top. 12 months, Elliot. Tours in Europe, Asia, South America. 3 weeks home between each leg. Starting in 2 weeks. The implication sank in slowly, then all at once. 12 months, across oceans, away from me. "You have to take it," I said automatically. "This is what you've worked for." "I know that intellectually," he said, echoing words I'd spoken to him weeks ago. "But knowing something and feeling it are different things." I settled beside him, taking the contract from his hands, forcing myself to read the details through the haze of emotions clouding my vision. "This is an incredible opportunity," I said finally. "A company with this reputation, this reach. Nico, this could change your career." "But what about us?" he asked simply. "What about this thing we're building?" The question hung between us, heavy with all we hadn't yet said, all we hadn't yet become to each other. "I don't know," I admitted, the words raw in my throat. "I don't have answers, Nico, just questions, and fear, and hope." He reached for my hand, threading our fingers together. "We can make it work," he said, but the uncertainty in his voice betrayed his doubt. "Video calls, visits when possible. It's only a year. Only a year. A lifetime in the span of a relationship as new as ours. A blink in the context of all we might become to each other." "When do you have to decide?" I asked. They need an answer by Friday. 3 days. 3 days to determine the course of his career, of our future together, of everything that mattered. "Let's think about it," I suggested, though my mind was already racing ahead, calculating risks and benefits, projecting scenarios with the same analytical precision I applied to coding problems. "Really think about it. Together." Nico nodded, bringing our joined hands to his lips. "Together." The next morning, I woke to find Nico's side of the bed empty, the sheets cool to the touch. Panic flared briefly until I heard movement in the kitchen, the quiet clink of cups, the familiar hiss of my coffee maker. I found him there, dressed in sweatpants and one of my t-shirts, too tight across his broader shoulders. The domesticity of the scene made my chest ache with unexpected tenderness. "Morning," he said, offering a mug. "I didn't want to wake you. You looked peaceful." I accepted the coffee gratefully, studying his face. There were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there yesterday, tension in the set of his shoulders. "Did you sleep?" I asked. "Not much." He leaned against the counter, cradling his own mug. "Too many thoughts." "About the contract? About everything?" I nodded, understanding all too well the weight of decisions that seemed to carry the entirety of one's future. "I was thinking," I said carefully, setting my mug aside. What if I came with you? Not all the time, obviously. I have work. But for parts of it, a week here, 2 weeks there, working remotely. Nico's eyes widened with surprise. You do that? Travel? Leave your apartment? Your routine? The suggestion had come as much of a shock to me as it clearly had to him. But once spoken, it felt right. Inevitable, even. For you? Yes. I stepped closer, resting my hands on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath my palms. You've already changed my world, Nico. Might as well see some of the actual world while I'm at it. His laugh was shaky, disbelieving. Elliot Chen, suggesting international travel. Who are you and what have you done with my boyfriend? The word hung between us. Boyfriend. Casual, yet significant. An acknowledgement of what we'd become to each other. Is that what I am? I asked softly. Your boyfriend? His expression sobered. Is that okay? Too much too soon? I considered the question seriously, weighing the label against the tumult of feelings in my chest. No, I decided. It's not too much. It's right. The smile that broke across his face was worth any uncertainty, any fear. He set his coffee aside and pulled me against him, arms wrapping around my waist. My boyfriend, he murmured against my hair. I like the sound of that. Me too, I admitted, letting myself be held, letting myself feel the rightness of being in his arms. So what do you think about my suggestion? I think, he said carefully, that it's the most incredible offer anyone has ever made me. But Elliot, international travel is a big step for someone who barely left his apartment 3 weeks ago. Are you sure? No, I admitted with a small laugh. I'm terrified. But I'm more terrified of losing this, us, than I am of airports and hotel rooms in foreign cities. He pulled back to look at me, eyes searching my face for any sign of doubt. You would really do that for me? With you, I corrected gently. I would do that with you. Something shifted in his expression, wonder and joy and a depth of feeling that made my breath catch. Then yes, he said. Yes to the contract. Yes to making this work. Yes to us. Relief and fear and excitement coursed through me in equal measure. We're really doing this? We're really doing this, he confirmed, before leaning down to seal the promise with a kiss. The renovation ended on a Wednesday, with little fanfare beyond a notice taped to the lobby door announcing the completion of all major works. The hallways were bright and clean, the elevator reliable once more. The chaos that had defined our building for weeks suddenly, anticlimactically, gone. That weekend, the weather turned unexpectedly warm for spring, a final gift before Nico's departure the following Thursday. We spent Sunday afternoon on the roof, no longer needing secrecy or excuses, simply enjoying the sunshine and each other's company. As evening approached, bringing a slight chill to the air, we stood at the edge of the rooftop, looking out over the courtyard below, the city beyond. Plastic drop cloths from the renovation still fluttered from a nearby balcony, catching the golden light of the setting sun. I'm going to miss this view, Nico said quietly, his arm around my waist. The building or the city? I asked, leaning into his warmth. Both, neither. He turned to look at me, eyes serious in the fading light. I'm going to miss you. The words settled between us, honest and heavy with all they implied. I'll visit, I reminded him, and there's video calls and texts and… I know, he interrupted gently, and I'm grateful for all of it, but it won't be the same as this. As being able to see you whenever I want. To hold you. To wake up beside you. It's only temporary, I said, trying to convince myself as much as him. A year goes by quickly. Does it? He looked out over the city again, expression distant. A lot can change in a year, Elliot. People change. Feelings change. A cold dread settled in my stomach. Are you having doubts? About us? No, he said quickly, turning back to me. Odd, no. If anything, I'm more certain about you, about us, than I've ever been about anything. He took a deep breath, as if steeling himself for something difficult. That's why I need to tell you something. My heart raced with sudden anxiety. What is it? He took my hands in his grip warm and steady. I would give up everything. My auditions, my shows, my carefully rehearsed steps. But only if you asked me to. The declaration stole the breath from my lungs. Nico, no, I would never. I know. He interrupted softly. I know you wouldn't ask. That's part of why I. He paused, swallowing hard. Part of why I'm falling in love with you. Time seemed to stop, the world narrowing to just his face, his eyes, the words hanging between us. You're. I couldn't finish the sentence. Falling in love with you, he repeated, more firmly this time. Maybe already there, if I'm being completely honest with myself. I stood frozen, overwhelmed by the magnitude of his confession, by the echo of it in my own heart. You don't have to say it back, he continued quickly. It's okay if you're not there yet. I just needed you to know before I left, needed you to understand what you mean to me. Words failed me entirely. Instead, I stepped forward, closing the distance between us, my hands coming up to frame his face. I kissed him with everything I couldn't articulate, the fear, the joy, the wonder of finding someone who saw me, really saw me, and chose to love me anyway. When we broke apart, both breathless, I rested my forehead against his. I don't know if what I feel is love, I admitted softly. I've never felt this way before, but I know it's more than I've ever felt for anyone. I know I can't imagine my life without you in it now. I know the thought of you leaving tears, something open inside me. That sounds a lot like love to me, he whispered, a cautious hope in his voice. Then maybe it is. I pulled back slightly, needing to see his face. I'm not good with words, Nico, not like you. But I'm trying to be brave enough to feel this, to let it be real. His smile was radiant, even as tears gathered in his eyes. That's all I could ever ask for. As the last light of day faded, we stood together at the edge of possibility, of fear, of something that felt remarkably like forever. Tomorrow would bring practicalities, packing, planning, promises to keep. But for now, there was just this moment, this man, this unexpected love that had moved my world irrevocably from its orbit. And for once in my carefully ordered life, the uncertainty felt like freedom.